Hello and welcome to The Olive Tree with me, Julia Fisher, the programme that brings you the voices of many Jewish and Arab Christians living in Israel and the Palestinian areas today, giving you a first-hand picture of what life is like for them. Today we continue the story of Oded Cohen. Last week we heard how this young secular Israeli who had no faith in God came to wonder whether God did really exist. We left him last week living in America, where his Chinese-American wife had just become a Christian. Today he describes how he put God to the test in order to find out whether or not there was any basis to his wife's newfound faith.
We had a pet rabbit, and she was paralyzed in both back legs. She was dragging her both back legs, and we took this poor rabbit to all the best veterinarians. They didn't help. We took it to acupuncture and acupressure, physical therapy, chiropractors, you name it. We tried everything. California, all the alternative medicine. And we spent so much money on this poor rabbit. I know it sounds crazy, but we really, really love those rabbits. And of course, nothing helped. And then coming home one day, I was kind of feeling sorry for her. And I thought to myself, wait, let's see what he can do about it. And I closed my eyes, I laid my hand on the rabbit's head, and I said, Jesus, if you are who they say you are, let's see you heal this rabbit. And before I opened my eyes, the rabbit just hopped on all four legs, ran around the room, and came back to me. I said, wow. But after the immediate shock, I said to myself, coincidence, what happened anyway? I didn't want to believe. I was so stubborn. No matter what happened, it's impossible. Of course, I didn't tell my wife. I didn't want her to be right. And time again, I kept on testing. God kept on answering. And maybe a couple more examples. At that time, I had bursitis, kind of inflammation of the hip that I had for maybe 3 years. Every time after I sit for a while, when I get up to walk, kind of an annoying pain in my hip. Until I can walk a little bit, then it warms up, and then it's okay. That kind of annoying pain never left me for about 3 years. And again, one day driving to work, I said to myself, again, let's see what you can do about that. And again, Jesus, if you are who they say you are, let's see you take care of that. And I totally forgot about it. And after about maybe a week, I suddenly caught myself that I don't remember when was the last time I felt that pain in my hip. It just gone, disappeared, never came back to this day. I said, wow, where did that come from? I said, a week ago I tested him and just like that. But again, maybe coincidence, maybe it would happen anyway. Maybe I changed some in my diet, my exercise. Never mind, I had no diet and no exercise, but impossible just like that. And still, I didn't tell my wife. And so things like that kept on happening to me on a regular basis. Dreams, things I didn't know about, just came to me to see that actually taken from the Bible. The first dream, actually, I remember, I saw a big tree, kind of very healthy, thick trunk, but cut off at the point where the branch is supposed to start. And out of the bottom of the trunk starts a nice green lush branch with leaves and everything. And I woke up in the morning, it was such a vivid picture that I said to myself, wait, maybe this big tree is Judaism and the branch growing out of it is Christianity. And maybe, just maybe, I don't know, Judaism and Christianity are not contradictions, but rather a continuation. And I shared that dream with my wife. But again, I never saw that image or picture anywhere before. I shared that picture with my wife, and she told me, Oded, that's exactly how it describes in the Bible. And she took me to the book of Romans and showed me how it described that, that Christians are grafted in to the people of Israel. But again, where did it come from? Now I know, I have no doubt. But back then, it just came out of nowhere, out of the blue. Picture I'd never seen before, and my interpretation was very, very accurate without knowing that. Anyway, so that was the kind of first one that kind of caught my attention. Then another dream later. At that point, Bimini, my wife, was already, I call it a full-blown Christian, walking in the streets, sharing her faith with strangers, telling them, Jesus loves you, we love you, come repent. And I criticized her, how phony can you be? You meet a stranger on the street, you never met before, and you tell them, Jesus loves you, we love you. First of all, how can you love somebody you don't even know? And then how do you know that Jesus loved them? Maybe a criminal on the street, and you tell them, Jesus loves you. And she tried to explain to me that I do it really out of obedience. And we really try to love everybody like Jesus loved everybody. And we don't want anybody to be condemned to hell, so we invite them to the kingdom. And I said, you don't really care for these people, you're just trying to earn some brownie points in heaven. And that same night, in my dream, my favorite radio talk show host, he was for me such an authority. Everything he said on the radio was more than the word of God. I didn't really believe in God at that point. But he was telling me, Oded, read the story of Lot's wife. Again, I woke up in the morning, I had no clue what the story of Lot's wife was all about. I mean, if you ask me, we probably learned it in, first grade or something like this. But when I woke up, I had no recollection what the story of Lot's wife was all about. And I asked my wife, honey, what is the story of Lot's wife all about? And she already realized something happened during the night. It was not the first dream. And she said, Dad, why? Who told you to read the story of Lot's wife? And I said, I don't know, Jeff Metcalf told me to read the story of Lot's wife. And she was laughing. She said, Dad, that was not Jeff Metcalf. That was God. But you wouldn't take it from God. You had to disguise yourself as Jeff Metcalf. You would listen to Jeff Metcalf, but you wouldn't listen to God. And when I read the story, it made perfect sense. All about obedience, all about disobedience. And I'm sure you're all familiar with the story. I had no clue. Again, when I read it, it was all about Lot's wife, disobedient, how she disobeyed, turned to a pillar of salt. But again, just when I challenged my wife's obedience, something like this just come out of nowhere. Anyway, so things like that kept on happening to me on a regular basis. And after about maybe a year and a half of challenging, testing God time after time, and denying the miracles and as a coincidence, and reading a little bit of the Bible, the straws that broke the camel's back, so to speak. I came home from work one day really, really, really sick, and I knew I'm going to be in bed for at least a few days. It wasn't just tiredness or headache. I was shivering, I was feverish, I was lifeless. I was so weak and so miserable that I guess I was willing to do anything. And for the first time, instead of testing God, I just threw myself on the bed, threw my arms to the side, and I said, Jesus, I open my heart to you. Please come into my heart. Please heal me. I need help. And I looked at it still mostly in the physical level. If he could heal my rabbit, if he could heal my hip, why not healing me again? And that's all I could remember. I fell asleep like a baby and woke up the next morning like a totally new person. And I knew at that point that it was more than just a physical, more than just that I don't feel anything that I felt before, the night before. But I literally felt like I received a brand new heart. And I raised my hand and said, okay, God, I give up, I surrender. How many signs, how many miracles, how blind can you be before you realize that God is trying to show you something? And my life never been the same ever since.
How did you get involved with Jews for Jesus?
Okay, that's another kind of God's doing. At that time, that was about 3 years later after I came to faith. We've been volunteering with Jews for Jesus for a while, going on the streets sometime, maybe cooking when they have a big gathering. We volunteer kind of in the kitchen. And so they knew us. And David Birkner, the executive director, invited us to his office to share with us what the ministry does and to invite us to pray about maybe we would like to consider joining them. And I knew, again, at that time, my dream to really become rich and lazy was really, really strong in my mind. I knew that if I joined the ministry, I won't have that freedom. But I said, okay, we'll pray about it. I didn't want to say, oh, no. And I also shared with him that if I joined the ministry, it would be very, very hard for my parents. Not only I became a believer, but now I become a missionary, God forbid. And also part of that is I wanted to be able to go to visit my parents on a regular basis. And again, I knew that if I would be in the ministry, I won't have that freedom. And David said, well, we can send you to Israel maybe, so you'll be close to your parents. I said, no, but that would be too close because my parents will be really ashamed of what I'm doing, so it wouldn't work. So anyway, so I said, okay, I'll pray. And at that time, we were, I don't know if you're familiar with Bible Study Fellowship. It's kind of an international curriculum of Bible studies, groups all over the world going through the same exact lesson at the same time. So if you are in California and you go for vacation in the UK, you can find that study so you don't have to miss it. Anyway, so we did that, and we studied the book of Matthew at that time. I remember there were two lessons that really, really spoke to me. And I had about 40 minutes drive between where I took the class and my home. So at the part where, with the story of the rich young ruler, after the class I was asking myself, and also I think some of the homework was, Oded, what stands between you and God in your relationship with God? What would be very hard for you to sell and follow Jesus? And at that time, I also was entertaining the question in my mind, why me, God? What is your purpose for me? Why did you save me? And what is your calling for me? What do you want for me? And then also another question was, can I really say that I understand the Savior part? That's easy. But can I really say with a clean conscience that I made God the Lord of my life, Jesus the Lord of my life? And I couldn't quite say that. Again, I had my own plans, my own desires, and I couldn't really say that I gave him lordship over my life. And so when I was sitting in my car, that was on some connection, some voice. It was not audible voice, but it was very, very, very clear communication that God kind of penetrated in my mind and said, Oded, forget about being rich. Forget about being able to do whatever you want. Come work for me, and I'll provide all you need, all your needs.
Oded Cohen, a Jewish believer telling his story. You're listening to The Olive Tree with me, Julia Fisher. Today, Oded and his wife are living in Israel, where for the past 8 years he's been on the team of Jews for Jesus, openly sharing his story. It's cost him everything in the world's eyes, but for Oded, he wouldn't have it any other way. So how can we help? The Olive Tree Reconciliation Fund, a small charity based in the UK, supports needy Arab and Jewish believers. You'll find articles, programs and information about our tours to Israel on our website, www.olivetreefund.org, where you can also leave a donation. If you'd like to receive our free bi-monthly newsletter, please either email inquiries@olivetreefund.org or write to me, Julia Fisher, at the Olive Tree Reconciliation Fund, PO Box 850, Horsham, RH12 9GA in the UK. I'll be back at the same time next week for another story from the Olive Tree. Until then, goodbye.